Hello! So this is a film that I am making at the request of Kerry-Ann. Hello, Kerry-Ann! And Kerry-Ann asked me, because I had recorded a film about mothers and daughters relationships. Kerry-Ann had actually asked me about fathers and daughter relationships. Now, it's an interesting one, because I guess in some ways I haven't physically or practically healed the relationship between me and my dad. And Kerry-Ann's description about her and her relationship with her dad, there's some parallels there. And I just want to, express that from the start, because I don't want to give you like, oh, and here's the answer to this problem and this is how you do it. But actually something quite remarkable has happened in my life that has given me a sense of understanding, and I really want to share that with you, because I think this sense of understanding might, not just for Kerry-Ann, but for other people, might give a little bit of insight into men. Brilliant. So, the insight into men. I had a dream one night. This sounds like I had a dream. No, I had a dream. And in the dream, I was a man. And I lived on the Amazon, and I lived at a very small village down at the bottom of the river. I say the bottom, it's very, very long, God knows, at some point, midpoint on the river, immaterial information. And I had a wife and a son, and I decided to get a job unloading ships. So there was a town up the river called Manaus, and a theatre was being built in this town, and I decided that I was going to get a job unloading the ships and bringing in all of the bits in the cargo and information, all of the barrels of stuff off the ships, ready to be built, because all of the things were coming over from Europe to be built in this particular theatre. However, I had 1.5 arms, and so I took myself to Manaus, and I stood at the dock with all of the other men ready to unload the ships. So I stood ready to unload these ships, and the men were picked and paid for a day's work carrying things off this ship. Now with 1.5 arms, that's a little bit difficult. So I was tall, I was gangly, I was skinny as a rake, and I could move, and I was very fast. So I would run up the gangplank, and I could take a barrel in one arm and run down the gangplank, put it where it was supposed to go, be back up the gangplank, back down again the gangplank, by the time one man had carried 2 barrels. So the point with this was I was fast, but no one would hire me. Because you look at someone with 1.5 arms and you think this person isn't going to be able to carry the same as a man with 2 arms. So I started drinking, and it was great because the ships were bringing in the booze. So I started drinking, and I eventually died of malaria from over drinking and sitting by the dockside because I was so ashamed. Now, as a woman, I don't think that we really understand this level of shame. It's a shame without words. It's a sense of being such a total failure that you cannot face the people you love, that you just bury yourself, that you cannot communicate with anybody this feeling of shame. And as a woman, I would never understand this feeling of shame. In my dream as a man, I just knew that there was no way that I could go back to the village and face my wife and face my son and face the in-laws and everybody that I needed to face and come back a failure. So it felt easier to just die by the dockside and not go back and face that sense of shame. Now, why this is relevant, and in actual fact it reminds me because in this lifetime I was a female working in a male-dominated environment. I worked as an electrician, and at one point in theatres, of all things, strange this, and at one point I was working in a warehouse in an electrical hire company. I've done this twice in my life. And I was carrying 2 Parkan lights, 2 in each hand, and running backwards and forwards up not a gangplank but on and off trucks, unloading trucks, when another man who had a bigger hand span, I've got tiny hands, could actually take 3 lanterns in each hand, carrying 6 lights. I could have brought back 8 lights in the time that it took him to carry 4. So it's very interesting. Now, whether or not, you know, I was having a past life flashback in this dream, or whether or not it's a dream related to the fact that I used to work as an electrician and the stories are in parallel, I don't know. Make of it what you will. But the feeling I had of understanding what that sense of shame was like took me to understanding a little bit about my own father. Now, I'm just aware of the fact that my own father's still alive and he may actually end up watching this, and so I'm sensitive to that. But the point is what I have understood from my male clients and from being able to read men intuitively is that sense of shame is really, really powerful. And so if you've got a dad that in a sense has messed up, and that messed up could be the fact that they couldn't be there for you, that numerous amounts of reasons, any definition of what messed up means. One of the problems of our particular generation, and I'm talking women in their 30s, early 40s, maybe even early 50s, is that there was a great epidemic of man bashing, which was all men are like this, all men are like that, all men are useless, all men are rubbish. I mean, if you kind of like look back onto sort of like sitcoms and things like that, and you can kind of go, wow, sitcoms used to be homophobic or racist or whatever, there has been a wave of anti-man. And so what ends up happening when a woman feels out of control of her life, and that might mean that she's out of control financially, it might mean that she's out of control because she's got children, whatever it is that makes her feel out of control, the only way for a woman to feel that she can have a sense of control, perhaps, is to control her partner or to suggest things to her partner. Now, in a way, what a woman is really trying to say is, I'm scared. I'm scared that I am falling out of love with you because you're not looking after the family in the way that I need you to. I'm scared because I don't know what our future holds unless you step up and help and be part of this. I'm scared because I don't want to fail at this marriage, or I don't want to fail at this relationship, or I don't want to fail as a mother. 100 different things, but women don't articulate the femininity of vulnerability anymore. We go, tell you what's wrong with you, you need to sort out that freaking tap that's still not this, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And what that does to a guy is it triggers this feeling of shame. It triggers a feeling of shut down. And a woman will interpret that to be, you're not listening. But what a guy interprets it to be is, I can't hear you. Because when you say these things to me, it brings forward such a sense of profound shame that I can't do what it is that you're asking me to do because you're paralysing me. Now, there's a lovely little catchphrase for this, which is called demasculating. But the problem is demasculating doesn't really cut what that feels like. And because men don't communicate, they might go off into the man cave and think about it and then come back and go, hey, darling, I've had a really good idea, which was your idea in the first place. But because a man can't express this sense of shame, he shuts down. And a woman thinks that shutting down is not listening. But that shutting down is a level of self-protection that we simply can't understand. And so when that sense of shame takes over, they close off, and of course eventually that will break down the relationship. When the relationship breaks down. And let me just back up here a minute. I think something else that's important to understand is that in the same way that when a woman has a baby, she gets an oxytocin rush. And that basically means she doesn't throttle the child at 3 o'clock in the morning for waking her up. A man gets addictive chemicals, not just the testosterone, but addictive chemicals that flush through his system, that when his child is born and when he first hears his child's cry, that he actually feels such a deep sense of responsibility, not just to the baby, but to the mother. It's like an addictive kind of bond that is created there. That to actually sever that addictive bond is, again, such shame. So we misinterpret and we tend to think that a man just doesn't care, but the shame that's involved with the detachment of a relationship breakdown, the shame that's involved with not being able to be the kind of father that they want to be, the old-fashioned kind of guy of the generation of the, you know, for women who are now kind of like, you know, 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe even 60s, was that the guy would just feel shunned, shameful, and basically die on the dock. So the guy would just walk away and just act like he doesn't care, because he has no way of being able to bypass this shame. He shuts that part of himself off, so much so that he actually kills it. It doesn't exist for him anymore. And so in the same way that in this particular past life, I drank, got malaria, died, couldn't travel home, if I was living at home and I had that sense of shame from not being able to get a job, not being able to fulfil my part of a bargain in a relationship or whatever it was, I would have, instead of shutting off and sleeping on the dock of a port, I would have shut off within the relationship. And so this is why women of our generation who've got fathers who shut off and closed down and weren't there for them, we think it was our fault. We do not understand the sense of shame that they have felt in order to end up acting in that particular way. The good news is there is a whole new generation of amazing men and amazing dads, and dads that stick by their kids no matter what. And I meet these men. I meet these men all the time. These men are my clients. These men come to see me and they say, Becky, how can I be a better dad? Becky, how can I be a better husband? Becky, you know, how can I bring my intuitive self into the relationship? How can I be a more empowered human being? These men are amazing, and these men probably had the same kind of dads that we had, and these men are saying, no, that is not the dad I am going to be. And these men do not feel shame. These men are not getting demasculated. These men are stepping up and stepping into their own power dynamic and finding ways to be excellent, amazing, amazing dads. And we need to applaud them, and we need to support them, and we need to support our men, even when we're thinking, my God, will you just get a grip? We actually need to become curious, become feminine, and actually say what we are really feeling, not try and control, not try and manipulate, not try and get them to do what we believe they should do because we believe we know what is best, but to actually listen to their own sense of motivation instead of deciding that they clearly don't know stuff as well as we know. Now, obviously, the thing is you've got to take, I mean, I'm making some mass generalisations here, and people are individual. And you might find that somebody really is genuinely a cloth head. And then other people are acting like a cloth head out of shame. And you've got to start to become curious about which it is, because one kills a relationship and one is a relationship that just shouldn't be happening. Cloth head relationship. Not a good look. So really, I hope that that kind of brings some kind of light onto the father-daughter relationship. I don't know how to heal that. I don't know how to say to your dad, do you know, I recognise that you felt a lot of shame and that you didn't know how to navigate, and that the reason why you cut me out like you don't love me is because you feel so much shame that your heart is surrounded like it's in a sheepskin rug. Strange analogy. But I don't know how to break through that. I don't know how to enter into that conversation or enter into that inquiry, because this is not something your dad is going to understand at a conscious level. He's only going to understand it at a very deep heart-based emotional level. And that might be so deep and so painful and so raw to try and get someone to cough up to feeling shameful about something. Well, you're just compounding shame against shame. And it's such a difficult thing to ask somebody to do. And certainly, whenever I've just pointed the finger and held, you know, my dad or any other male accountable, it never works. And another way of finding a way into that conversation, you know, if you find that, link me to YouTube, because it's really an interesting dilemma. It's a dilemma. But the most important thing is to keep asking yourself where love can show up. Where can love show up? How much more love can I bring into this situation? And sometimes, just by setting the intention to love, that can actually be enough to break through the shame. That can actually be enough to open a heart and make it feel strong enough to be able to heal. Who knows? It's a nice thought anyway, isn't it? Well, good luck, ladies, with your dads, and good luck with your partners and the fathers of your children. It's an exciting time, but at the end of the day, it's always, what more love can I bring to this situation, is always the answer to the question, every time.